Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar today. Today, we're going to do a walkthrough of the 2019 accountability data reports that are available online. The 2019 accountability ratings were released to the public on Thursday, August 15th for all campuses and districts throughout the state. You can explore the state data tables and you can view the parent-friendly data reports by visiting txschools.gov. That is a new website that we launched. It's a very parent-friendly website that has graphics and information for parents to access so they can understand accountability ratings in Texas. Additionally, you can also view ratings and data tables on our 2019 Accountability Rating System webpage. This is our TEA webpage that is meant for administrators and teachers and those that need help understanding accountability ratings from a more educator-focused point of view. Let's go over the differences of these two websites. We have txschools.gov and our TEA rating systems webpage. So txschools.gov has lots of parent-friendly graphics and images. It also has tools to analyze, compare, and view data from one campus to another or one district to another. txschools.gov also has an interactive map of district and campus performance that's geared toward parents to look at performance for an entire school district, or maybe in a downtown area or a rural area. They can get a top-down view of performance using the map. Both txschools.gov and the TEA ratings website contains domain and overall report results by data tables. However, the 2019 TEA ratings webpage contains detailed data reports. I'm talking about percentages, rates, numerators, and denominators. The TEA website also has performance data that's disaggregated by student group for each of the domains. And the TEA website also has downloadable data tables in a PDF format and also in a CSV or Excel format. Lastly, the TEA website has state and ESC reports on performance. So we have these two websites. txschools.gov is really geared toward parents and the public that just need the most pertinent information for accountability ratings, whereas the TEA website does include all the ratings information, but also includes very detailed information on performance, numerators and denominators, and it's really geared toward educators and those that want to know the full amount of information on accountability. This webinar will focus on the data tables published on the TEA ratings website. So let's have a quick overview of the accountability system. In order to get an overall rating for a campus and district, we weight the better outcome of the student achievement or the school progress domain at 70% of the letter grade, with the remaining 30% of the letter grade coming from the closing the gaps domain. So we have three domains: student achievement, school progress, and closing the gaps. Student achievement focuses on performance across all subject areas for all students in both general and alternate assessments. It also looks at college, career, and military readiness and graduation rates if the campus graduates students, like at a high school or at the district, or K through 12. Second, we look at school progress, and that measures district and campus outcomes in two areas. The first, it looks at students that grew at least 1 year academically. Then it looks at the achievement of all students relative to districts or campuses with similar socioeconomic statuses. Lastly, closing the gaps disaggregates data to demonstrate differentials among racial ethnic groups, socioeconomic backgrounds, and other factors. In this domain, it is aligned with indicators in the Every Student Succeeds Act under ESSA. So we have three domains of performance to get an overall rating. Today's presentation is going to focus on the data reports for each of those domains. For overall, we're going to look at the overall rating summary and the district summary for all campuses. For student achievement, we have three data tables to look at: STAR performance, college, career, and military readiness, CCMR data tables, and graduation rate. For school progress, there's two parts, so we have two data tables: academic growth and relative performance. In closing the gaps, we'll look at the closing the gaps data table and also the data table for the identification of schools for improvement. This uses data from Closing the Gaps to identify campuses that are in need of improvement. Again, we're focusing on data reports from the TEA webpage. So on the 2019 Accountability Ratings website, we can look at data tables for campuses and districts. You can search by district name or number, or by the county name, or by the region number. Today, I'm going to focus on all the reports that you can generate regarding accountability. I'm going to use an example district, Katy ISD. So here's a demo of how this would work. On the TEA website, we have links to the 2019 accountability reports. You can search for a campus or district first by selecting campus report or district report. To then view a district, we would need to search by either its name or its number, or look at districts by region number or county name. I'm going to use Katy ISD and I'm going to search. It's found Katy ISD in Harris County. Then I'm going to select one of these data tables to view their results. For example, I've selected Accountability Ratings Overview Summary. And at the bottom, I can click on View Reports to get my data table to view my rating results. So let's go through each of the possible data tables for 2019. First, I'm going to focus on the summary data tables. You can follow along with me by looking at Katy ISD's data tables, or you can go to the website right now and pull up your own district or campus and follow along as we review these data tables. First off, I'm going to go down the line and I'm going to focus on right now the summary data tables. This was the first data table that you can download in the Accountability Rating System webpage. So this is the data table. I took a screen grab of it for this presentation. So this overall rating summary includes the following. Up at the top, we have the header that displays the campus or district name and number. In this case, Katy ISD, which has a corresponding district number. If I pick the campus, it would have the campus name and the corresponding campus number. On item 2, I see each component is displayed and the corresponding component underneath that domain. For example, student achievement for the district has 3 parts: STAR, CCMR, and the graduation rate. 3, I can see the component score, and that is the raw or component score based on the calculation methodology of that particular component. 4, I can see the scaled score. That is the raw domain, or that takes the raw domain or the component score and then scales it to the common conception of letter grades for the A through F accountability system. 5 shows me the actual A through F rating label based on the scaled score. So let's take a look at this. For Katy ISD for 2019, this district is rated at a scaled score of 92. Now this has been scaled because the public understands that a 92 in anything from 90 through 100 is considered an A. For Katy ISD for 2019, a 92 grants an A rating. So this campus, or this district, I'm sorry, is rated A. For student achievement, overall we have an 89, which equals a B, because the public understands 80 to 89 equals a B. This comes from the student achievement domain. This grade is based off of the 3 components: STAR, CCMR, and the graduation rate. Those results are listed under my component score, which was then scaled. From there, those results are weighted to get an 89 or a B for the student achievement domain. For school progress, I have 2 parts: academic growth, which is a component score, which gets scaled. In this case, a 76 is scaled to a 90 or an A. And relative performance is a 71 raw or component score, which is scaled to a 91, which is also an A. I take the better of for school progress. In this case, 91 is more than 90. So 91 is what the rating is for Katy ISD for school progress. Closing the Gaps has a 94 component score, which is scaled to a 95 or an A. For these results, I take the better of school achievement or school progress. In this case, it's a 91, and that's 70% of the letter grade, along with 30% coming from the Closing the Gaps domain, which is a 95. I take those two, weight them, add together and round, which gets me a 92 or an A for this district. In section 6, if available, this displays special provisions or distinction designations earned and identifies campuses if I'm looking at a campus data table, if the campus is identified for improvement. This particular district does have a special provision, which is for the student achievement domain. So this district did not receive an A in the student achievement domain because the district includes at least one campus that received a D or an F in the student achievement domain. So this district result was capped because it had a campus that received a D or an F in the student achievement domain. Additional information about capping is available in the 2019 Accountability Manual. Our next data table is the district summary. Now, again, on the website, I am going through each of these reports just down the line. I looked at the overall rating summary. Next, I'm going to look at the district summary and so on. So this is the district summary. This displays all of the campus information on one screen. So if I pick Katy ISD, it would show me all the corresponding campuses within the district. At the top, the header displays the campus name and number. Section 2 shows me each campus within that district. Number 3 shows me the corresponding campus type and grade level served. Elementaries are first. And that, for example, the first one, Bear Creek Elementary, it shows me the grade level served. In that case, it's a pre-K through 5. Section 4 indicates whether the campus is an alternative education campus or not, and the percentage of economically disadvantaged student enrolled. Number 5 shows me the overall scaled score result and rating. For example, for Bear Creek Elementary, it shows me that the campus had a C rating based on a 76 score. And the public understands a 76 equals a C. 6 shows me the student achievement domain scaled score and rating. 7 shows me the school progress domain, which has 2 parts, academic growth and relative performance. For academic growth, I can see the rating and the score. Also for part B, relative performance, I can see the rating and the score. Part 8 shows me the Closing the Gaps domain score and rating. Part 9 indicates if that particular campus has been identified for comprehensive, targeted, or additional targeted support interventions. Section 10 shows me alternative education accountability bonus points. AEA campuses can earn bonus points toward their overall scaled score. A maximum of 10 bonus points, 5 for graduation plan type, and 5 for EOC retest assessments are available. This would only be for alternative education accountability campuses that are awarded bonus points. It would be listed here. The campus is not an alternative education accountability campus. No information is displayed. And then on number 11, we have a link to download the data from this data table as an Excel file. If you have any questions, please submit your questions through slido.com using the event code 2019 reports. Those were our 2 overall summary data tables. Next, I'm going to focus on the student achievement data tables. The first one I'm going to look at is the STAR performance data table. There's a lot of information here, so we're going to take our time and we're going to go through this data table in depth. At the very top of the STAR performance data table, you will see the calculation table, which summarizes the sum of tests at the 3 STAR performance levels by subject. So the top part is a summary of section 3, the actual data table, which includes the numerator and denominator of STAR performance to get the percentages. This top part just shows me a summary of those data tables. So, excuse me, let's look at STAR performance total tests. This includes a total summary of all tests in the subject area of reading. 49,102 total tests administered at this particular district in reading. Additionally, I see 39,555 total mathematics STAR assessments administered at this particular district. So if I go left to right on totals, I see a total count of all STAR tests given, a sum of all subject areas, which is 130,181. That is total STAR tests administered at this particular district. The second column shows me the disaggregation of the STAR results at the approaches grade level and above. The next row shows me all the STAR tests at the meets grade level and above. And then lastly, all the STAR tests that achieved master's grade level. From here, I can see that I have a total count of all tests at the approaches grade level, meets, and masters, which is a numerator denominator of all tests at the approaches, meets, and master's grade level. Those three percentages are added up to get a 200, or a total percentage points. That is then divided by 3 to get my component score, or a 67. Okay, let's focus on the actual data table. Section 3. This disaggregates STAR performance by student group, by performance level and subject area. Section 4 shows me the subject area by performance level on tests. I have the number and percent. The top section shows me all subjects, which is a summation of all reading, math, writing, science, social studies tests. So for the all subjects area in this particular district, I have 3 percentages. I just reviewed those two. 90% at approaches, 69% at meets grade level and above, and then 41 at master's grade level. Where did those percentages come from again? If you look at the bottom, I have my actual number count of tests. Remember, I had 130,181 total STAR tests administered at this district. That's my denominator. The numerator would be the following. For approaches, I had 116,785 tests at the approaches grade level. So numerator, denominator for approaches gets me 90% of STAR tests that met the approaches grade level standard and above for this particular district. 69% were at the meets grade level or above. Where did that come from? Again, my denominator is 130,181 total tests. Of those, 89,916 are at the meets grade level. Numerator, denominator gets me a percentage. Same for masters. 53,128 at the master's grade level. Numerator, denominator, 130,181 gets me a percent. That is summarized here at the top. Additionally, I see that the bottom data tables are broken out by subject area. This aggregates all subjects, reading, math, writing, science, and social studies. If I want it broken out by a particular subject area, I can scroll down on the web page to view reading, math, writing, science, social studies, and so on. The data table also disaggregates in section 5 the results by student groups. So going back to the all subjects area, I have 130,000 total tests for all students, but then I see it broken out by subject area. For example, for African American, 14,873 total tests were administered to African American students. For Hispanic students, total tests administered were 46,119. and then so on for all the other student groups that we have. Now, if you try to add together African American, Hispanic, white, Indian, economically disadvantaged, and so on for total tests, you will not equal 130,181 total tests. Why? Well, you can have a student be in multiple student groups. For example, you can have a student who race ethnicity is Hispanic, that's one. Maybe that same student is on free and reduced lunch, so that student goes to economically disadvantaged as well. That's two student groups for one student. Maybe that Hispanic student is also receiving special education services. That's a third student group that the one student belongs to. And maybe the student has been continuously enrolled in the district. So that's four possible student groups. So one student can be a part of race, ethnicity, economically disadvantaged, maybe an English learner receiving special education services, or being continuously or non-continuously enrolled. Which is why if you add together the student groups, you will not get the total because one student can be a part of several student groups. This entire data table in section 6 is available to download on Excel. All you need to do is click on the link for Excel. Regarding particular information on retest or SSI, that is covered in the 2019 Accountability Manual. Again, we're just reading the data table for this webinar. That is STAR performance. Let's talk about CCMR. This district has graduates, and those graduates are either college, career, or military ready. The data table explains the results for CCMR. Section 1 shows me the total count of graduates. For 2019, we're looking at the class of 2018. We're looking at the total count of graduates. And so the total count of 2018 graduates for this district was 5,416. Those that graduated and walked the stage. Okay. From there, I have a total count of credit for CCMR. That would be a graduate meeting any one of the criteria that I'm going to talk about next in the data table. So a graduate would just have to meet one of those indicators to receive credit for CCMR. Now you might see that there's a 0.5. And so there is one indicator that would award half a point of credit, which is why you see half a point for the total amount of credit awarded. So the total count of credit for this district is 4,002.5. Numerator, denominator gets me 74% for CCMR. So where does this data come from for total credit for CCMR? That would be in section 3 at the data table below. So looking at section 3, this is where we disaggregate CCMR performance data for all the graduates. The first section, section 3, looks at the total count and percentage of graduates who meet the Texas Success Initiative TSI criteria. And that looks to see if they met the criteria in both reading and mathematics. So a graduate would have to meet the criteria in reading and in mathematics. In order to do that, they could meet the following: either meeting the criteria score on the ACT test, or maybe the SAT test, or earn credit for a college prep course. They could also take the TSI assessment and receive credit that way. On the data table, you see a disaggregation of all graduate results meeting the criteria for TSI reading. You also see the criteria for TSI math. Now, at the very top, we have 3,462. So why is that lower than, for example, reading, which had 4,071 results? Well, that would be because for this indicator, the graduate has to meet the criteria in reading and mathematics. So for this particular district, only 3,462 graduates met the criteria in reading and in mathematics to be awarded CCMR credit. So 4,071 met it in reading. However, some of those did not meet it in math, which is why they were not fully counted for TSI criteria. Graduate would have to meet both reading and math in order to count for the TSI portion. If the graduate doesn't meet the TSI portion, graduate could be considered CCMR ready by, in section 4, having AP or IB exam credit. And that would be those who meet the criteria score on the AP or IB exam in any subject area. Or in section 5, the graduate could meet the dual credit course requirements. And that would be the graduate earn credit for at least 3 hours in ELA or math, or 9 hours in any subject area for dual credit. Section 6 would be our industry-based certifications, where a graduate would earn an industry-based certification from an approved list. Going down the data table, we then have we have number 7, which is level 1 or level 2 certificates. And that would be a graduate that earned level 1 or level 2 certificate in any workforce education area. This data comes to us from the Higher Ed Coordinating Board. Next, a graduate could be CCMR ready by earning an associate's degree while in high school. Or section 9, looking at on-ramps dual enrollment completion for at least 3 hours of university credit. Section 10 looks at graduates with a completed IEP and workforce readiness. Specifically for this indicator, we're looking at graduates with a type code 04, 05, 54, or 55. Students who are receiving special education services can be CCMR if they graduate with an advanced degree plan in section 11. Or the graduate could be enlisting in the U.S. Armed Forces. Section 13 looks at a disaggregation of all the students that met the criteria above, like 1 through 12, so they met the non-CTE criteria. The last one is section 14, which is CTE coherent sequence coursework. This would be for a graduate that completed none of the above indicators, but did take coursework that's aligned with an industry-based certification. So if the graduate did none of the indicators above, but took CTE coherent sequence coursework, they are awarded half a point of credit, which is why this indicator has 0.5 in the numerator. So again, at the very top, we have a summation of the total count of credit for CCMR, 4,002.5. That's the numerator. The denominator would be the total count of graduates for the class of 2018. Numerator, denominator gives me my percent for CCMR. Lastly, for student achievement, we look at the graduation rate data tables. This district has data for 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year. So at the top, we have the disaggregation by student groups. And then on section 2, we look at the 4-year graduation rate for the class of 2018. We have the total number and percentage who graduated within 4 years. That data is then disaggregated by student group. Next, we have a 5-year graduation rate that lists the total count in the class of 2017 with the total number of percentage who graduated within 5 years. Now, if you look at this data table, you'll see highlighting around the 5-year. And that's because for accountability, we look at the 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year rate, and whichever percentage is higher is what is going to be used for accountability calculations. In this case, the higher rate comes from the 5-year graduation rate from the class of 2017. Section 4 looks at the 6-year graduation rate, which is based on the class of 2016 with the total number and percentage. So let's look at these percentages one more time. For all students, I'm looking at all graduates. I have my denominator, which is the total in class. For the 4-year, that is 5,531. Total graduates in that class, or total students in the class. From there, the number that graduated was 5,244. Numerator, denominator gets me my 4-year percent, which is 94.8. For the 5-year, that graduation rate is 96.4. which is the highest rate even from the 6th year at 96.1. So this is the highest rate for the 4, 5, and 6 year, which is why it is highlighted and used for accountability calculations. Section 5 has data on the annual dropout rate. This is for districts that serve students in grades 9 through 12, but if the graduation rate is not available, like for campuses that serve students in grades 9, 10, and 11, for example, for those campuses that do not have a graduation rate, a dropout rate is instead used. Now this district had graduation data, so we went with the 5-year in this case, but data on the data table is presented for information only. That was student achievement. Now let's move into the school progress data tables. For school progress, we have 2 different data tables. The first one is academic growth. When you download a data table for academic growth, you're going to see section 1 here, the calculation report, and then the actual data table. Let me talk about the calculation report first. So this provides a summary of academic growth outcomes. We're looking at reading and math, so the calculation report highlights results that are summed from ELA reading and math. Section 2 looks at the growth points earned, and that summarizes the calculation of points awarded from the data table below that I'm going to talk about. Section 3 is the total possible points, and that's the sum of all assessments with an eligible STAR progress measure. And then section 4 is the academic growth score, and that's expressed as a percentage. Total growth points earned divided by total possible points rounded to the whole number. So my numerator is going to be growth points earned, and that comes from the data table below. And then my total possible points is all the possible assessments with eligible STAR progress measures. So that is a summary of the following data table. So on this data table, we're looking at ELA reading and math summed together for growth. So this data table, one on the left-hand side, has prior year STAR performance levels. The STAR performance levels are did not meet, approaches, meets, and masters. At the top on section 2, I have the current year STAR performance levels. Did not meet, approaches, meets, and masters. How growth is calculated is that looking at the STAR progress measure, students either did not meet progress, or progress is not applicable. There is no way to calculate it, in other words, or students have met or exceeded their progress, and they're awarded a full point. Students who do not have progress, who do not meet progress can be proficient, meaning that they maintain the same performance level. If so, they're awarded half a point. So how do you read this data table? So we go left to right and then top down. So for example, on the left-hand side, this is for results in 2018, prior year STAR performance. The top looks at current year STAR performance. So if I am looking at, for example, I have students last year at the approaches grade level. And if I go to the column for did not meet in the current year, I had 1,747 assessments that went from approaches last year to did not meet this year. Because they went from approaches to did not meet, or there was regression, the students did not meet their STAR progress measure. So from there, for that particular scenario, from approaches to did not meet, I had 1,747. I also had 1,695 that went from did not meet last year to did not meet this year. That is totaled to be my total number of tests that were awarded 0 points. Additionally, let's look at a scenario that did have points. Let's say I had, for last year, approaches grade level, and then this year I had students that went to the meets grade level, a higher level of performance. So for those students, they went from approaches last year to meets this year, and they met or exceeded their progress measure. In this example, I have 4,941 tests that met that scenario. From there, I had also a number of students that went from meets last year to meets this year that had a progress measure. This whole column will total all those particular scenarios that are granted 1 point. At the bottom is my total points from all those assessments that had 0 points, half a point, or a full point. All that is summed together for my total points earned, which is 49,746.5. That's my numerator. My denominator would be all those STAR tests that were eligible for a STAR progress measure. I had 65,198. That's my denominator. Numerator denominator gets me my percent or my score for this particular indicator. So this data table displays all the possible ways that a student met growth, did not meet growth, or maintained proficiency by all the points possibly earned. That is summed together into a numerator, my total points earned. My total possible points would be all the assessments that were eligible for a STAR progress measure. And that gets me my percent. The next piece is relative performance. This graph shows me two things. On the y-axis, it displays the student achievement, the STAR data, or STAR and CCMR if that is available for your particular campus or district. In this particular example for the district, I have STAR data and CCMR data. So those two raw points are then added and averaged, and that is my x-axis from 0 to 100 possible points on that one. My x-axis is the percentage of economically disadvantaged students as reported in the fall snapshot, not on the answer documents, but on the fall snapshot. For this particular district, then I can see that on section 4, that is the plot point of the district or campus's relative performance outcome. How this works is that there are particular grade bands, and you can see the highlights for green, blue, light blue, yellow, and red. Depending on where you plot within this graph, which is based on your reported economically disadvantaged percentages and how you perform on STAR and CCMR, you will then plot using the X and Y axis on performance to either an A, B, C, D, or F grade level. This particular campus plotted on 0.4 into the A band, so it was awarded an A. The data table on section 5 displays the actual numbers used. Section 5 shows me my reported percent of economically disadvantaged students from the fall, which in this particular district was 31.6. So 31.6 economically disadvantaged, which is in the percent grading band or range of 31.1 to 32. Their y-axis was their STAR and CCMR data that was averaged, which was a 71. So going back to the graph, they were at 31.6, which is this X plot area, and then they achieved a 71, which was right in this area, which is why they plotted at an A grade level. Section 6 shows me the values needed for an A, B, C, or D. So they had a 71 for STAR and CCMR, which warranted an A. Now, why is that? Well, the value needed for a 90 or an A was at least a 68. At 71, they had more than enough to be granted an A. So going to these cut points, if they had a 46, for example, to a 51, they would be granted a D or a 60. In order to get a 70 or a C, they would need at least a 52 to a 59 to get a C. in order to get an 80 or a B for performance on STAR CCMR, they would need a 60 to at least a 67 to get a B. Or in our case, they would need at least a 68 and above to get a 90 or an A. For STAR and CCMR, they had a 71, which was more than enough than a 68 needed for an A, which is why they have an A for relative performance. Lastly, I'll talk about the Closing the Gaps data table. The Closing the Gaps data table shows me the following. The top section is my calculation report, and that shows me how this particular district was awarded on section 8, their component or raw score, which was a 94. This comes from, on section 2, all the indicators evaluated. For this particular district, they are evaluated on academic achievement, graduation status, ELP status, and school quality. So those 4 components are applicable to that particular district. Now this can change based on your campus or district type or the availability of data. For this district, we're evaluating on these 4 components. Section 3 shows me the sum of the evaluated student groups that met the federal targets. So those student groups that met the targets necessary by that component. Section 4 would be those student groups that met minimum size to be evaluated. Section 5 shows me the percent of those indicators met. And then section 6 shows me the weighting of each of those components to get the grade. And 7 shows me my actual score for that component. So how do I read this calculation report? Let's start off with academic achievement. Academic achievement looks at, in this case, the total count of student groups that meet minimum size to be evaluated. So they had enough students to just be evaluated, which was my denominator, 28. Of those, 28 or 100% met those targets necessary that were our federal targets. So 28 over 28 is 100% of eligible indicators met. Now that percentage is weighted at 50%. So academic achievement counts for 50% of this grade. 100 times 50.0 gets me a 50 score. Now let's look at graduation status. This district had 9 student groups that were large enough to be evaluated. That's my denominator. Of those 9 that were large enough to be evaluated, 4 met the targets needed for that particular indicator. 4 divided by 9 gets me 44%. The graduation status for this district is worth 10% of the total grade. So 44 times 10.0 gets me a 4.4 score. ELP status only looks at 1 student group, and this particular district met the target for that 1 student group, 100%, and that ELP status is worth 10% of the total grade, which gets me 10 points. Lastly, school quality. I had 11 student groups that were large enough to be evaluated. All of them met their targets, which is 100%, and that is worth 30% of the overall grade, which gets me a 30 score. I add together my score for all 4 of those components. I round, and that gets me a 94 for the Closing the Gaps score. Okay, so that was simple enough, but where did we get the data for each of these 4 components? When you pull up the data table, you can scroll down and look at the actual results of each of those components that we just looked at. Section 1 at the top disaggregates the data by student groups. Let's focus on the yellow section, which is academic achievement. That's section 2. Section 3 looks at, if you look here, we're looking at reading and math. And this indicates if the student group met the federal target, yes or no. And then the percentage and number of those assessments at the meets grade level standard or above. and then the total sum of tests. So let's look at all students, for example. I'm just going to focus on this column right here for all students. So the target for all students for academic achievement in reading is 44%. Now, this district met the target, which is why there is a Y for yes. How did they meet the target? So they met the target because if you go here, we can see the number of assessments that are at the meet grade level standard or above, which was 33,135. Every single assessment at that district for all students at the meets grade level and above. That's the numerator. The denominator is my total tests, 49,102. Numerator denominator gets me my percent of tests at the meets grade level standard for all students in reading. The target is 44%. This district scored 67%. So did they meet the target or above? Y for yes. I can see each of these student groups here also met their targets. And they met their targets because there is a specific target for that student group for reading, and then the percent scored. So the percent was above the target, so yes, they met their targets for reading. That's just for reading. Now then for math, I also see targets, and the targets are different by subject area. Again, all those student groups, numerator, denominator, had a percentage. Did that percent go to the target and above? Yes or no? And that's what the data table highlights. Section 4 shows me my total count of student groups that met their target. So I just count up my yeses and nos. If I count up all of these, I have 28 that met their target. 28 total evaluated. I look to see, again, those student groups that met minimum size, did they have a yes or a no? So 28 over 28 is my 100% for academic achievement. Let's look at growth. The green section is my academic growth section. And the same idea is that I'm looking at the section for reading and math. And this shows me for those student groups, did they meet the federal target for that particular subject and student group, yes or no? We focus on all students on growth for reading. The target was 66%. I have a Y, meaning yes, I met the target for all students for reading. How did I do that? So I had a growth score of 74, which comes from my numerator denominator. My denominator is my total tests with the growth measure for all students in reading. My numerator would be those that met or exceeded their progress or maintained proficiency based on the data table that I just reviewed for student growth. Numerator denominator in this case gets me a 74. The target for all students in reading is 66. They meet the target or above? Yes. For this indicator on section 8 and 9, I see that I have a 28 of total student groups that met minimum size. I just count up my yeses and nos. I get 28. From there, 26 met their target. And I do see some nos. For example, Pacific Islander. Why did that student group not meet their target? Well, the target is 67. I see that that comes from my score of 65. My numerator was 28.5. From my denominator, total test 44. Numerator denominator gets me 65 for Pacific Islander. The target is 67. Did they meet the target at 67? Not with a 65 result for Pacific Islander, which is why that is a no. So of my 28 total student groups that were evaluated, only 26 met the federal target. Next, I'm looking at graduation rate. The top, again, disaggregates data by student groups. On the left-hand side, I'm looking at my graduation status in green. Section 3 indicates if that student group met the federal target, yes or no. I also see on the left-hand side the percent that graduated from 2017, and then my total number of graduates from the class of 2018, the total count and the percent who graduated. So let's look at all students. The target is 90% for all students. I'm looking at my class of 2008. My total in the class is 5,611. From there, 5,256 graduated and walked the stage. Numerator denominator gets me my 93.7 for my class of 2018, which is above 90%. So yes, that student group did meet their target for all students. Now, however, you might look at African American. African American did not meet their target. So why is this? So we have a no. I'm looking at African American. The total in class was 603. Of those that graduated and walked the stage, I have 553. Numerator denominator gets me a 91.7. So why did I miss the target at 91.7 when the target was 90? Well, for 2019, there is a provision that says that if a student group last year was at 90 or above, which for this student group for 2017, they had a 91.9. For 2019, we need 0.1% of improvement. For 2019, this student group scored 91.7, which was not 0.1% improvement on 2018, which is why that student group did not meet their target for 2019. For my graduation rate, I'm looking at the total evaluated student groups. I count my yeses and nos because there was enough students to be evaluated. I have 9 student groups that met minimum size criteria. From there, I have 4 that met the federal targets. Okay. The next section looks at the English language proficiency status. We're only looking at one particular student group, which is current ELs. So the section is for English language. I look to see, did that student group meet its target? Yes or no? They met their target because of my total TELPAS results, 9,923. My numerator would be those that showed progress from last year to this year. Numerator denominator is 59%, which is above the federal target of 36. So yes, that student group met their targets. And that is summarized in section 4, 1 total evaluated, 1 total met. Next, I'm looking at my school quality status, and that looks at CCMR data. At the top, I have the disaggregation of student groups. I'm looking at school quality. This also looks to see that student group met the federal target, yes or no. Let's look at all students again. For all students for school quality, I have 5,514 total students. Of those, my numerator for meeting CCMR criteria, any one of those criteria, was 4,005.0. Numerator denominator gets me 73% for all students. The federal target for CCMR for all students was 47. So at 73, I met the target for all students. Section 4 looks at the total count of student groups that met the target, which was, in this case, I had all of them, which was 11, and of those total evaluated, 11. Lastly, I'm looking at participation. And participation indicates the percent and number of scored, or the participation on the left-hand side, STAR, and TELPAS results, and the total count of answer documents, total tests. The target for each of these student groups is 95%. So for all students, I see that I had a total count of reading tests, 52,121. Of those that actually participated or had a scored STAR or TELPAS result, I have 51,876. Numerator denominator, which was rounded, gets me 100% for reading. Lastly, using the Closing the Gaps data tables, we identify campuses in need of improvement. We identify 3 possible categories: comprehensive, targeted, and additional targeted support campuses. This is an example of a campus that is identified for comprehensive support. This is only going to be available and displayed for campuses that are identified for comprehensive support. Some campuses might not be identified for anything, so there'll be no data available. Some might be identified for comprehensive or targeted or additional targeted support. This is an example of a campus identified for comprehensive. If the campus is identified, the following data table will be displayed, indicating Section 1 that the campus has been identified for comprehensive support and improvement. Section 2 would be the results by year. In Section 3, we're looking at the closing the gaps cut point used to identify comprehensive. Section 4 looks at the scaled score, the domain letter grade, and whether the campus was identified or not. So why was this campus identified for comprehensive? Let's look at the data table. I see that for 2018, the bottom 5% closing the gaps cut point, that's what the agency uses to identify campuses, is if they rank in the bottom 5%. That cut point was 47 in 2018. For 2018, this particular campus had a 63, so they were not identified. However, in 2019, the cut point was 42 for closing the gaps. Their 2019 closing the gap score was a 33. So because that was at or below the cut point, and because the closing the gap score was an F, this campus was identified for comprehensive support and improvement. Again, their cut score in 2019 was a 33. I'm sorry, their result was a 33. The cut point was a 42, which is why they are comprehensive support and improvement. The next would be an example of a campus identified for targeted support and improvement. Section 1 indicates this campus is identified for targeted support. Section 2 looks at the count of indicators missed for 3 consecutive years by student group. So in order to identify a campus for targeted support and improvement, a student group must miss 3 indicators for 3 consecutive years. This campus was identified based on the all student group. So you can see a highlight under 3 for all students. So this student group in section 3 then, we're looking at the year, the component target, and the result, and whether that student group met the target, yes or no. The red highlighting indicates the student group missed the target for that year. In order to be identified for targeted, just one student group would need to miss 3 indicators for 3 consecutive years. And this happened because 1, for academic achievement in reading, the target was 44. This particular student group missed the target they had scored a 34 in 2017, so no, they didn't meet the target. They had scored a 29 in 2018, so no, they did not meet the target. And in 2019, they had scored a 31, so no, they didn't meet the target. They missed academic achievement in reading for 3 consecutive years, so that's 1 indicator. Next, for growth for reading, they missed it in 17, 18, and 19. The cut point, or the target, was 66. They missed it 3 years in a row for reading. That's 2 indicators. Next, they missed the target for student success in 17, 18, and 19. That's 3 consecutive years. So 1 indicator, 2, 3 indicators missed for that 1 student group 3 consecutive years in a row, which is why this campus was identified for targeted. Now, why wasn't it 4? If I'm looking at mathematics, I see that although they did meet the target in 17, they missed it in 18 and 19. Our methodology is that the student group must miss it 3 consecutive years in a row. So this campus did not meet it 3 consecutive years because they met the target in 2017. So this 1 student group missed 3 indicators for 3 consecutive years, which is why this example campus is identified for targeted support and improvement. The last indicator would be a campus missed it for additional targeted support. So this campus is identified for additional targeted support and improvement. Section 2 indicates whether or not that student group met the target for additional targeted support identification. yes or no, and if the 18 identified campus, or if the campus met the exit criteria for 2019, yes or no. So this example campus is identified for additional targeted support based on the Asian student group. So for additional targeted support, we're looking at indicators evaluated in 2019. So the target for this case is 9% for the Asian student group. So the total count of indicators evaluated for the Asian student group was 3. The number of student groups that met the target was 0. Where did that data come from? Looking at the bottom, we see that the Asian student group had enough students to be evaluated in academic achievement and in reading and in math. However, in reading and in math, they did not meet their targets. Red highlighting and no indicates that they missed their target. They did not have enough assessments for growth to be evaluated or the English language proficiency. However, they did have enough to be evaluated for STAR. Although they were evaluated, they did not meet the target for STAR. So that Asian student group was evaluated for 3 indicators. None of those indicators met the target for the Asian student group, which is 0%. The target was 9% and above. No other student group missed their targets at 9% and above. In fact, they all met their targets at 100%. So this one student group is at 0% of all their indicators evaluated, which is why this particular campus is now identified for additional targeted support and improvement. This was a brief walkthrough of the 2019 accountability data tables. If you have questions about the methodology behind why we include certain numbers, rates, numerators and denominators, and graduation data in the accountability system, I encourage you to review our summer learning series where I talked in depth on each of the 3 domains: student achievement, school progress, and closing the gaps. Copies of those presentations, as well as the full 2019 accountability manual, are linked on our A through F resources page and on the performance reporting resources page, where you can get a copy of this presentation. And additionally, this will be posted to the agency's YouTube page for you to view at a later date. If you have not signed up for our weekly bulletin, I encourage you to do so by going to the TEA homepage and clicking on the link on the top right for sign up for updates. Our newsletter is the Performance Reporting Weekly Bulletin. Additionally, all of the ratings information is available on our performance reporting homepage, and the data tables that I walked through are on the 2019 Accountability Rating System webpage. If you have any questions about accountability, please call us or send us an email at performance.reporting@tea.texas.gov. If you have any additional questions, please submit them through Slido using the event code 2019 reports. We'll be happy to answer your questions after this webinar. And if you have any follow-up questions, please email or contact us at the contact information displayed. Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar. I did not review the distinction designation data tables, but I will cover that in depth in October. So please be on the lookout for an invitation to that link, or you can sign up on our performance reporting resources page for that. Also be on the lookout for a taper walkthrough coming in December. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Have a great rest of the week.